get a, ooh, something popped up. Hold on. All right, we're recording now. So could I get a approval for the minutes of May 6th?
moved. Second.
Thank you. And what we have next is either, we'll have Mike. Okay, we're going to do the body camera beta test update. Thank you.
Okay, I'm doing the screen share. Did the screen come up?
No,
Let's try this. Okay.
there it is.
Okay. You should see the timeline of our beta. And we got started with this process and the research. If you remember, mid last year with some stakeholder meetings and a council presentation. And since then, fast forward to June, we have completed our beta test. And just a reminder, we acquired 2 units to test. We had a total of 5 officers who volunteered to assist with field testing these units and put them out in patrol. We had an opportunity to have these things tested both the day and night shift for our 12-hour patrol shifts. During this time, we captured over 400 total incidences. And the vendor that we had selected to use was WatchGuard. And the reason we selected that is because that's the vendor we have for our dash cams. And we're also able to do some swapping and sharing of information from some of the other local jurisdictions who use some of the other vendors, such as Axon.
Okay.
So the feedback we got from our officers, this was extremely key to have not just our stakeholders involved in this process, but to have the police officers provide us with some key information. Some of the things we found is that even though these units were in a test mode through this last 3 months, we had recorded some very significant cases, some instances where some officers were assaulted, some instances where we had arrested some wanted subjects where our detectives wanted that video. We actually were able to extract those recordings out so we could use those for evidence. That was fairly significant. Another thing that came out from these cameras was they really got noticed from our citizens. You wear the camera, right on your chest, somewhere around your upper body region, and people would look for them. Oftentimes when they were being interviewed by our officers, they were asking, do you have a body camera? And at times that would create some compliance. It actually helped de-escalate some situations. They're a hot topic. I mean, they're all over the news. And so people are looking for these. Our officers found that these cameras were easy to use. We're not a stranger to recording things, but since we've had the dash cameras for about 20 years, bringing these out into different parts of the community was a little bit different for our officers.
So Mike, a quick question, if you'll go back one screen, please.
Yep.
So some people became upset they were being recorded. Did they say why, or did they just get upset?
They just simply got upset. And this brought up a lot of questions for the using officers. They came back to us with some policy questions about, when can we turn it off? Can we deactivate the camera if it's a non-arrest type situation? And we advise them that, yeah, absolutely, that they can turn it off if it's a situation that would create a de-escalation. And if it was a situation that wasn't maybe an arrest incident, that they could shut that off to calm the situation. So.
Oh, okay. I'm sure I'll have questions later on that.
Sure.
Okay.
And some of the challenges, some of the things that the officers reported, when they were doing interviews out in the field, they would get some background noise, from the planes and different stuff. And so some of those recordings were difficult to hear. The cameras do not have a night function or a infrared. So I'll show some examples of what they look like in the dark. Mechanically, sometimes they get caught on the seat belts. It's really just trying to figure out the best way to wear them and use them. Sometimes they would come off. They would have a magnet. Some of the officers used a clip function. And I'll show some videos too. Sometimes the camera, with the way it's worn, can be obstructed if the officer's hands are in the way. Bringing these cameras out into the field and into homes obviously brought up some privacy issues, and there are times when the officers recognized that particular video would require quite a bit more redaction than maybe something that was used out on the street. The battery life was certainly not as advertised. And we worked really closely with the reps and worked with some other vendors about the battery life issue. There are several workarounds, such as dialing down the amount of pre-record and post-recording, and dialing down some inner workings of the camera. They are coming out with some new cameras here in the next year. We also found that with our cameras that we have, unlike other vendors, we can swap the battery out mid-shift. So similar to maybe a radio, sometimes our batteries in the radios will go out mid-shift, and they can simply take the battery off and put it back on. We ran into some issues with some tech support. Cameras, again, are a very hot topic. A lot of agencies are demoing them. And so getting parts and getting the vendor to respond quickly, things were delayed about 6 to 8 weeks looking for parts, which we wanted to kick this off in January with the beta, but we weren't able to acquire our cameras until March. And then some of the filming when the officers are out on foot patrol, you can see in the videos that I'm about to show, it was a little bit shaky.
So Mike, go back one, please.
Mm-hmm.
So with the fact that you chose the vendor you did, and I understand why, could there be other vendors who have less issues based on what you just reported?
I reached out to some local jurisdictions to talk about the battery life issues, and they were running into the exact same thing, and with about a 5 to 10% drop per hour, which seems to be kind of standard.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, and then the one workaround is the fact that we could swap out a battery. One of the other big vendors that some of the agencies use don't have a battery swap option. You have to dock the camera, and we're really nervous about docking it and leaving it and having the officer maybe go out and then not have the camera on.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. As I went through the 400 videos that got recorded, a lot of the videos I saw were the inside cockpit of the car, which is the upper right corner there. You saw a lot of steering wheels and a lot of computers because of the way, how the camera is worn. So that was a very common view, where our dash cams capture a much broader area and a wider angle view. Obviously with the computer sitting there, that's an area that would need to be redacted because of the personal information that's on the computers. The video here, you can see where an officer's hands are obstructing a little bit of a view of an incident.
Is this outside the car?
This is outside the car.
Okay.
So we'll see if I can get this to play. You could just tell with just something simple as putting on a mask, potentially block maybe a critical incident where we would expect some footage. But I saw several videos like that. Here's another one where the video camera is taken with the officers to go on a call to somebody's apartment.
It's quite pixelated.
We pixelated that with the help of Matt Johnson, our IT contractor.
Okay.
Just for the privacy issue, because it was a potential domestic violence case.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so we've got a little bit of that capability to do that, but that's just an incident where the officers were bringing the camera with them and they'd go inside homes. You can see here at nighttime how dark it is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We've reviewed footage from other vendors, from other agencies, from instances that they have recorded, and it's the same thing across all of the other dash cam or body cameras. In a low light situation, they tend to do pretty well. You can see this officer moves into a well-lit room during a search, and it lights up, and the video is actually very good. So the 2021 legislative session brought about quite a bit of significant legislation that would impact law enforcement. And one of those is House Bill 1223, where this particular bill does not require body cameras. We do feel that body cameras would be one way to address this requirement to record custodial interrogations. And those custodial interrogations are interviews that take place inside the police station. But the body camera is just one mechanism that would be used to address this. And there's significant legislation that we need to act quickly and carefully on. So,
But you do have video inside the room, correct?
yeah, we already have the WatchGuard video system that is used by our detectives to do interviews and interrogation that records both audio and video.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So just some final notes on overall findings, that we did find that this does improve accountability, not just from the stuff that we captured, but just from talking to some of the other departments and doing some research. The evidence is by far absolutely fantastic and almost expected nowadays for court. We've captured some stuff that we just absolutely had to put in the cases. And the feedback we got from the officers would actually improve some interactions with some of the citizens and help de-escalate them, knowing that the officers were equipped with a body-worn camera. The technology is moving at lightning fast speed right now. The vendors are coming back, even though we've gotten the estimates way back at the end of 2020, they're coming back with different estimates for us to look at, stuff that involves like a bundling of all of our cameras with the dash cameras and interview cameras, as well as some additional cloud storage, some built-in redaction software. So this is an ever-changing, ever-evolving, very quick industry, the body-worn cameras for sure.
So you'll be taking a look at some of those as time goes on?
Yeah, and some of these estimates are a lot more impressive than we originally looked at. They're now integrating into our records management system, and they offer with our Spillman system, they can dump a certain recording into maybe a case that an officer has written. So just fantastic technology.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So it presented a similar slide in our presentation to council back in December. And this is really the phases would be the trying to acquire some of the body cameras, the purchase, which may take a little bit, some policy updates, which is ever evolving, which is going to be based on case law, federal laws, best practices, software installation, and then definitely the need to train the officers and best practice and problem solve when to activate, when to deactivate. Okay.
So fellow committee members, are there any questions or comments on the update?
Yeah, I got some questions.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Hi, Mike. Thank you for the presentation. I thought it was pretty good and right nuts and bolts, very direct. A couple questions. So you talked about the background noise. I obviously assume traffic. Did you have also airplanes be an issue?
Correct. That was our primary issue. And
Okay.
we, Mr. Johnson and myself met with WatchGuard earlier this week, and they assured us that the next version of body cameras is going to have some improved microphones to drown out that background noise.
Okay, you just answered my next question. That was great. The redaction, you mentioned that that your officers realized that certain things needed to be redacted. Is there did you kind of come up with a policy where they might call out certain things to help the editor to look at particular parts or of the video, or are you just letting the editor do it?
Yeah, we haven't looked that far down the road, but
Okay.
they certainly came back to us saying that, hey, there's going to be some situations where we're going to need to redact because of the amount of time that they are recording in the car and inside people's homes. And so we're going to have to work very, very closely with our city personnel who are responsible for the redaction and public disclosure requests.
Okay, well, you're thinking about it. That's what I talk about. And then obviously right now there's not better batteries, but the fact you can replace them as well is good. Are in your estimate, you're assuming carrying quite a few batteries to ensure continuous, feeds, I
Yeah.
guess you might say.
Yeah, we've had the vendor change our estimate to include 2 batteries per camera, and there'll be 1 camera per car. So originally it was to have one battery. So
Okay. Or is there any chance that I know some of the new technology on cameras, even on phones, they have it's like a still motion where the shaking and stuff is mitigated, you might say. Is there any efforts in the cameras for that, or is that a future technology type thing down the road?
yeah, that is not a piece of the camera that I saw.
Okay.
Matt Johnson, did you happen to talk to any of the tech people about that piece? Do you know?
That part of the technology typically isn't on the camera, and they have independent applications that can do something called de-interlacing and interlacing. So you can take a shaky video and then it stabilizes it and it doesn't move around as much.
Okay. Well, at least the efforts. And then the last one is, obviously we say we go buy these cameras, we buy the batteries, everything else. Does our contractor, are we intending to include, because as you said, the technology is lightning fast? Is the ability to upgrade on a regular basis to, ensure that we have the best ability to for the officers and residents?
Yeah,
Is there
that's a
something that works
fantastic
like that?
question. That came up this week, talking to our vendor with their new estimate, and their bundle includes continual updates as well as the free, not just the software updates, but as well as we have the V300. It would include a free V350, which is the next one coming out.
Okay. Well, I like your answers. Thank you. Those are the questions I had.
Sure.
So, Councilmember Martinelli.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question in regards to moving forward. Does this need to go back to the council before more body cameras can be purchased, or is this being purchased through administrative authority? Or I see Mike Glass's hand up.
Yeah, let me respond to that. A couple of things. Appreciate Mike Graddon's presentation. I think one thing I want to emphasize is that we have worked closely with Chief Thomas, with the Guild, with the police department to come to this conclusion, come to this outcome. The next step for the role of council is we would go forward, implement body cams, and come back to council with a budget amendment for the costs associated with that. So that's essentially the opportunity council would have to weigh in.
So there is some research that has to be done, and probably at that time, it would be good to give an updated presentation to council as well.
Well, I think part of what's going to happen this evening as our departments relate what their work has been, that the chief or Mike or whoever's giving the presentation for PD will talk about this presentation at that point.
Tonight?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, I have another question though, and I do appreciate the update. That was very good, Mike. I mean, good information, great input by the officers. So when you mentioned that they have the authority to turn off those videos if there's a situation that's getting ready to escalate, I'm not second guessing anyone, but my question would be, how do you wait till it's almost escalating, or do you have a sense that it might? What is the trigger for them to turn it off? That concerns me a little bit.
Yeah, that's a valid question. And our officers have been doing this for 20 years with the dash cams, and those are triggered from the sirens and the lights and traffic stops. That kicks it in, and they can also remotely turn it on. So they're a little familiar with turning the cameras on and off, and they turn them off now when the incident is done, when the violator drives away and the traffic stop is over. And so now they're just having to manually push the button And what our training would include, and which is consistent with policy, is that as they're going up on a traffic stop, for example, that would be one trigger that they would turn it on, that would take place prior to the violator contact. Okay, or if they're going to contact maybe a subject who's disruptive inside Safeway, the training and the policy would say that camera would be activated, and it would be deactivated once the situation is over. Once you're back to your car and you're writing your notes or your report, that's when it would be turned off. Or once you realize the situation is no longer an active scene. So it is a lot of turning off and turning on. And some of the officers did report, there it can be kind of an officer safety thing at times if they're trying to look down and turn it on during an incident. And we would encourage them to get it just turned on ahead of time. We'll worry about the mass storage and the amount of data they're collecting down the road. That's not for them to worry about. We want them to be safe and turn them on and off when it's reasonably safe to do so.
Right. Sort of answers my question. I'm not sure if I asked it correctly. I guess if I get stopped for whatever the reason, forget who I am, and I don't want that camera on and I start to get really irritable and upset, is that when they turn it off, or do they try and calm me down first before they turn it off?
Yeah, in that particular situation, if that were a mock scene that we're training the officers on, that would be to keep it recorded until the situation has been de-escalated, and use that as a tool, and try to work with the violator on it, because that situation can very quickly become a violent encounter. And of course, we would want to capture everything that's involved, all their de-escalation techniques, everything that's used and said. We would want that evidence.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I'd be more than happy to share our policy somehow, if that's appropriate to do at some point, so you can go through it and read what the activation, deactivation protocols are.
Yeah, I would be very interested. I'm sure my committee members would be as well.
Sure.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mike. If there's no other questions, we're going to go on to the street racing ordinance update. My assumption is Matt Hutchins is going to give that. Hi, Matt.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you, committee members and staff and others. First order of business, if the traffic outside gets too loud, please let me know. I'm on a very busy street, and I can close the windows if I have to. So yes, I'm prepared to go through the draft ordinance. We prepared after getting some direction from the committee last month. If someone from PD is interested in giving any policy or background on it, they're welcome to, but I'm also ready to jump in. All right. So the draft ordinance is in the packet. So it doesn't address the act of street racing itself, which is already illegal since that is defined as reckless driving. But these racing events, they can draw large crowds that have plenty of their own problems attendant with them, violence, trash. When police show up, people flee, causing public safety issues. So this is to address the crowd attendance issue. It's largely based on Kent's ordinance. They were the first to do so, and all the ordinances I looked at in the state are pretty much all based on what Kent did. So if we were to enact this ordinance, it's going to create a new chapter in Title IX, that's our criminal code, with 4 sections. The first one begins with definitions, as we usually do. First one being prior offenses, and that is in there to accommodate this the committee's direction that there should be a stepped series of consequences for this offense. The first one being an infraction and then going criminal after that one. So to do that, we had to define what an offense, prior offense is. Then we'd find public place, and that basically just makes it clear that it's not just being in the road or on the sidewalk that can make you culpable for being in attendance at one of these racing events. So people go into parking lots, they go up on planning strips, they hide in alcoves. So this makes clear that sort of hiding out of view is not going to help you. And then the final definition is defining what an unlawful race event is. This is based on Kent's most recent definition. They originally just had your run-of-the-mill 2 cars driving down a straightaway as racing, but as time went on, they discovered they needed to address things like drifting and doing burnouts, that sort of thing. So section 2 is where the actual offense is defined. So there are 3 elements, and pretty much any unlawful race attendance ordinance in the state has these 3 elements. That you're at an unlawful racing event as was defined, that you know that it is an unlawful racing event, and that you are there for the purpose of observing, supporting, encouraging, or participating in the event. So that sounds simple enough, but the question is, how does a prosecutor get a judge or a jury to understand that those elements have been met? Any of us, if we drove by the business park in the middle of the night and there's some scene from the Fast and the Furious going on, pretty much any of us can see it and understand that street racing is going on. But I know it when I see it. There's not really a strategy you can use with the jury. And there's also a danger that we could be criminalizing innocent behavior and not the specific behavior we're trying to target if there is sufficient guidance about what we actually mean. So subsection 2 of section 2 gives a list of things that the jury can consider. And they're generally things that you will find attendant with street racing. I won't go through all of them, but I think you can probably all understand what's going on there. So with that, a judge or a jury should be able to get the context and understand and be able to make the determination, was there a racing event going on? Would an ordinary person know that a race was going on? And was that person there to take part in it? And then the final 2 subsections, that is where council imposes the penalty. And again, we took your direction from last time. The first time is it's an infraction. In this draft, it is set as a class 3 infraction. And that comes with a maximum penalty of $103. Went with that one just because that's closest to what people would expect for traffic offenses. The council could, in the alternative, make it a class 2, which has a maximum penalty of $256, a class 1 with a maximum penalty of $513, or cut it down to a class 4, which the highest amount would be $51. And then if they have a prior offense, as was previously defined, then it would be a misdemeanor. You'd be looking at jail time between 0 and 90 days, and a fine between $0 and $1,000, plus statutory assessments. Section 3, that gives the the municipal court judge the authority to issue a stay out of areas of racing order anytime someone is criminally charged with either this unlawful race attendance or other crimes where there is a connection to an illegal street race, such as reckless driving, racing, trespassing to be at a unlawful racing event. And what that order would include is the person would be ordered not to be at any racing events as defined under this chapter. The judge could also designate certain areas where the person is not allowed to enter that area. And that would be based on, it's an area that's known to be hosting these sort of racing events. Obviously, the place where the person was cited for being in attendance at a racing event would be the most obvious, but if police is aware of other areas where racing has been going on, we can make that showing to the judge and ask that the person be excluded from those areas as well. And then the last section is basically the consequences for violating the court's order. That would be a separate offense that is also a misdemeanor. So it would be jail up to 90 days, up to $1,000 fine. And the police would be specifically empowered to arrest someone on the spot if they're found in violation of that order. Do I have any questions about Michael?
Yeah, thank you, Matt, for that. I mean, first of all, I completely support the work of the committee to establish this ordinance, but I wanted to just point out two examples where cooperation helped avoid problems with this. One was working with the Assistant Chief Cooey on an event that happened at the business park. And within one day, this happened on a weekend, within that Monday, contacting the property manager, they were put barriers in place to prevent this in the future. So that was cooperative in the private sector and really helpful. The other one was the event that did not happen at Redondo, and the degree of cooperation that our police were able to establish with both Washington State Patrol and other jurisdictions in terms of a mutual aid response that essentially prevented that event from occurring, which is the best possible outcome, is the prevention. So this gives teeth and tools to our police, and that's excellent. But also I think that the idea that we can cooperate to try and solve these too across, be it sectors like private sector, public sector, police, all of that, is really an important thing to do at the same time. So I really applaud our police for how they've been dealing with this.
I totally agree, City Manager, and I would say that I have not seen Kent's, but that doesn't matter because if many other jurisdictions are using it, I would say that this pretty much expresses everything that we talked about before. I certainly know that with all other situations, we try to get cooperation. So I'm sure that this will be based on whether it's a private owner, a cul-de-sac, or wherever these are occurring, because my God, they're everywhere. In our city, we would certainly try and get cooperation with wherever that area or location is, unless we have some specific questions, concerns, or I'm sure we're not against this. Deputy Mayor Mahoney?
Yeah, I'm okay with everything here. I especially the first offense piece. What I'm wavering on is class 2 or class 3 for $256 versus $103. And the reason why is this is a well-known problem up and down I-5. And the discussion is, do we make it a little more costly? Obviously, the judge probably has the liberty to downgrade it, but is a class 2 give that room to do that when they feel that somebody was there and won't do it again, and they'll lower it to 103, or maybe probation period or a part of the money or funding? So that's kind of where I'm at, whether it should be 2 or 3. I know you said it's in line with some of the other things we do, but I mean, we're creating this ordinance because we have a real problem, and it sends a message that it's punitive if they participate. So that's I'm throwing it out there.
Yeah, but I'm trying to understand what you mean by we have a real problem.
Well, street racing is continued to grow and become a problem, and we're
We
hearing.
know it is across many jurisdictions, but in our jurisdiction, I'm not getting the sense that it's widespread. Who am I talking to? Mark or Mike?
I think that's an accurate statement, Councilmember Bangs. I think that, it is a big problem. It can turn deadly, obviously, and we've seen some of that elsewhere. So, but I defer to the wisdom of the council members. I think the bail amount is set by the state Supreme Court, Matt, and obviously then it's up to council to decide what level of violation.
Yeah, it's just off of reference of what Matt said, that we could make it a class 2. And it was just something I thought we should discuss before. Obviously, I think we're going to take this to council. I mean, I'm fine with leaving it as is. I just want to call it out.
Well,
And
let's ask Tim. Tim just popped up. Sorry. What do you think, Tim? Can we get some feedback from you?
I'm always stricter. I would have said the 513. Class 1.
Okay, I'd have gone 1,000, but
Well, 513 is the max. I think Councilmember Mahoney has a point as far as, with the class 2, you could ultimately have the judge reduce that. Because generally, if you have a infraction issued and you request a mitigation hearing, and you basically tell the court, I agree, I committed it, and I'd like the court to reduce the fine. It's pretty standard practice for the judge to reduce that, maybe 30% or so. So, if you got a $103 ticket, now you're reducing that to around $75. It's fairly low considering we have, potential criminal consequences for this with a second violation. So, I think Matt's point is good. It's probably pretty standard at the 103, but, if you raise it a little bit, it might give the court a little more flexibility.
Councilmember Martinelli, do you have a comment?
Well, I think that personally, if we were going to set the initial infraction at a class 3, I think a class 3 to a misdemeanor is quite a jump. Like, I really appreciate that we made the first offense an infraction. And so if we vote on this as is, I will support it. But I would personally like to see, if we're going to have the first offense be a class 3 infraction, I would then like to see the second offense be a class 1 infraction, have that ticket go from 100 to 500, and then have the third offense be a misdemeanor. Because the $100 ticket to a misdemeanor is quite a jump. But at the same time, once they get that first infraction, they understand what the law is. So if they do it again, I'm not necessarily against that being a misdemeanor, so I will support it. But, I personally think that's quite a jump. So I would like to see there be like a middle ground. But as is, I do support it, and I appreciate that we made sure that first offense isn't a misdemeanor.
Well, I'm hearing.
I can, it'll be an easy enough fix if it is the direction of the committee to make it up to a class 2. Essentially, the final decision will be made by the council, and no matter what form of this goes to the council, it can be amended to whatever the majority of the council wants. But
well, how about we take it back, Matt and Tim, and add that in or increase it?
I would second that we change it to a class 2, and then the
Okay.
council as a whole can decide from there.
Anthony?
Yeah, I'll probably argue in council to keep it a class 1, but I'll support moving it
Yeah.
to the council as a class 2 for now.
All right.
You
Or,
mean a class 3 or a class 1? Class
Yeah,
1 would be 513, Councilmember Martinelli.
I would like to keep it as it's written now, where the first offense is a class 1, but I'll support moving it to the council as a class 2.
That, what it is, what you're saying, it's written as a class 3 right now, right?
yeah,
I apologize. I would prefer it to stay a class 3, but I support moving it to the council as a class 2.
okay.
All right, all right.
So
Think we have direction on that.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Now, I know we only have a couple, actually, we're beyond time, but we have about 3 minutes. So Ken, did you want to take the floor? Shannon, sorry, next time. All right, Ken, you wanted the floor on some updates?
Yes, first I wanted to introduce, and thank you for that. Sorry, I've been on with the governor's office.
Okay,
I wanted to introduce Matt Johnson, if that was not already done while I was off the phone. Matt is our consultant to help us with IT issues in the police department. He has extensive experience with police IT issues over many years. So we are super lucky to have him at our city and to help our department with the various IT stuff. Okay, real quick, I'm gonna pound down. Welcome, Matt. We're happy to have you.
welcome, Matt.
A lot of changes coming in the police department. And I wanted to, with your approval, Louisa, just go through them real quickly
Yes,
here, and
we
we may
have-
also do that at the council meeting.
Okay, we have 2 minutes.
Okay, Commander Graddon is going to the city of Enumclaw, doing a lateral transfer. We wish him the best of luck. We're gonna do an internal test for Commander to replace him. Detective Sergeant Dave Moore is retiring at the end of this month. What that does is create opportunity for 2 people to be promoted to sergeant, and that would be Isaac Helmgren and Justin Kripe will both be promoted to sergeant. Detective Sergeant Bill Shepard has an opportunity to be an instructor at the Criminal Justice Training Commission. He has applied for a position. He's a very accomplished instructor. If he gets that, he'll be on the books with Des Moines, but 100% of his salary, benefits, and everything is covered by the Criminal Justice Training Commission. So it's a wash. And we have hired a lateral officer from the State Gambling Commission. He starts on June 16th. And we have forwarded a conditional offer of employment to an entry-level police officer. So lots of stuff going on, and there you go.
And you're
I hope
giving
I
that
made it.
report today? Is that correct?
Yeah, under department updates.
Wonderful. I
That's my
really
3 bullet
appreciate,
points.
awesome. I appreciate that. Everyone did a great job today. If there are no other questions, concerns, or other updates, I will ask for an adjournment. Do I get, okay? Deputy
Second.
Mayor, second. Thank you all very much. See you in 15 minutes.